All right, my name is Melissa Waters, and I'm the Manager of Events and Programs here at JMT. And thank you for joining us for our strategic planning series. Today, we will be covering creating a shared vision in small business. I'd like to cover a few things, and then I'll turn it over to our presenters, Ed and Rob. This webinar is sponsored by JMT Consulting. We're an ERP and financial management solutions firm with 30 years experience that specializes in nonprofits. If you have any questions at all during the webinar, please make sure to submit them in the questions portion of your control panel. We will answer those at the end of the webinar. We are recording this, and we will share a copy of the recording and the slides with you after the webinar is concluded. You'll also receive a survey at the end of the webinar to tell us how we did today. Finally, I'd like to introduce Ed Kless and Rob Johnson. Ed Kless joined Sage in July of 2003 and is currently the Senior Director of Partner Development and Strategy. He develops and delivers curriculum for Sage business partners on the art and practice of small business consulting, including the Sage Consulting Academy, business strategy, and customer experience workshops. He also hosts the Sage Advice podcast and co-hosts the Voice America Talk Show Network, Soul of Enterprise with Ron Baker, founder of the VeraSage Institute, where Ed is also a senior fellow. Now introducing Rob Johnson. For over 25 years, Rob has been helping businesses develop their sales and marketing departments. Prior to joining JMT, Rob served as the CRO for several organizations, developing overall go-to-market strategies and spearheading growth. Previously, he spent nearly 15 years leading sales and channel organizations for Avalara, Sage, and Timberline. He brings vast experience to lead JMT's sales and marketing organizations. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Ed and Rob. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Melissa. Rob, great to work with you again.
You too, Ed. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. Rob and I were together at Sage for the better part of 6 or 7 years, and had a great time. The aforementioned Consulting Academy was a part of something that Rob was doing called the Sales Academy, and spent many a night at the DFW Lakes Hotel Hilton in Dallas, Texas, and learned about Rob's ice cream habit. But that's enough personal information for now. I don't want to get too much information.
That's fine.
Yep. But today I want to share with you some material that is very near and dear to my heart. Goes back a long, long way in my pedigree to back in the time when I owned my own business in the 1990s. Can't believe that I'm saying this. I'm at Sage since 2003. So quick math on that. Yeah, it's going to be coming up on 18 years in July, which is just incredible. But I want to jump right in and talk about this thing called the 7S model. But before we get there, I want to give you some background and a little bit of my own bias on a few things. The first is that I think that we overcomplicate business in a lot of ways. In fact, this slide here was shared with me by a guy by the name of Peter Block, who I'm a big follower of. He's really the guru in terms of the modern consulting movement. And in his book, The Answer to How is Why, he posits this, I guess it's a business theory. And he says, in business today, we mostly spend our time dealing with 6 and only 6 questions. And they're the ones that are listed over on the left-hand side of the slide. How do you do it? How long will it take? How much does it cost? How do you get those people to change? How do you measure it? And how have other people done it successfully? And if you think about it, many of the conversations that we have during the day are related to one of these 6 items that fall in the bucket. Of course, like the pronouns change, right? The you changes, the it changes from company to company, from industry to industry. But ultimately, we're talking about these 6 questions in some way. And his insight is this. He says, oftentimes we are inordinately focused on this how. This notion of how are we going to do something? What is it that we're going to do? How do we do this right here and now? And he says the problem is that oftentimes the reason why we struggle answering these how-based questions is because we haven't fully asked and answered what he calls the what matters or yes questions. The name of his book is The Answer to How is Yes. It says what we have to do is spend a little bit of time shifting back over to the questions that are more crucial to us, these what matters questions. And he says, if we get clarity around these what matters questions, it makes then answering these how questions much, much easier. In fact, one of the things he says is that these how questions are natural defense mechanisms against change. If somebody at a session, during the conversation or during a meeting proposes something new, hey, I think we should do this. What's going to happen is at some point in the conversation, that person is going to be peppered with these very practical questions. Oh yeah, well, how much is that going to cost? Oh yeah, well, how long is that going to take us? And these are very important practical questions. But Block says the problem with these questions, when they are asked and answered too early in the process, is they end up blocking any initiative, any change that can happen inside the organization. So the problem is not the question themselves. The problem is the timing of the question. Are we asking and answering these questions too early in the process? Because we can get wrapped around an answer. Let's just take quickly a look at one of them. How long is it going to take? When somebody asks you, how long is this going to take? If you really think about it, it almost doesn't matter what your answer is, because they got a built-in refutation of the question. Well, you can say, well, it's going to take us about 2 weeks. Well, you could immediately say, well, there's no way we could get it done in 2 weeks. Or alternatively, we don't have 2 weeks. We got to move quickly on something. So it doesn't matter what your answer is. You're being set up when somebody asks you, how long is it going to take? Because there's no right answer to that question. Because the real question is, are we willing to commit to this? Whether it takes us 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 days, are we willing to commit to this? So it's this Blockian insight that I like to see that is the foundation for what I'm about to share with you next. This quickly is a little diagnostic tool. What I love about this is I think you can follow along with this pretty quickly. The question is, what are you experiencing inside your organization? If you're experiencing success, then you have all of these. Then you've got vision, then you've got skills, then you've got the initiatives, the resources, and the action plan. But inside your organization, which of these do you think is the thing that's holding you back the most? Is it a sense of confusion? Is it anxiety? Is it slowness of change? Is it frustration, or is it false starts, or some combination therein? And there's not maybe a one right answer, but I think what this is really helpful in doing is saying, oh yeah, well, what we clearly see in our organization is a slowness of change. We can never get things done. It takes an awful long time for change to happen. Well, then most likely what the prescription for your organization is to focus in on and building some initiatives so that the change happens a little bit quicker. What are the incentives that you're going to put in place to make sure that this change happens? So as a quick and dirty diagnostic tool, I really like this. Rob, I wanted to bring you in here and see if you have any thoughts or comments on this. I know you've worked a little bit with this tool in the past, but.
Yeah, I think, as you were reading them off, I think especially in 2020, most organizations have at one point or another felt all of those.
Yeah.
And at times, an overwhelming amount of all of those. And so the question is, how do you respond to that? What do you, when you sense it, how do you respond to that? And therein lies the reason we're on the phone today and we're on this webcast is how do we identify them and how do we respond to them? So.
Right. I mean, and that's a great point. Like in earlier in 2020, the whole notion of anxiety, I think we could say that almost every business experienced a fair amount of anxiety when suddenly we couldn't go into the offices anymore. That would be an anxious moment. And if you think about it, look, well, what was the reason? Well, because we don't know if we had the skills. Did we have the skills in place to be able to continue to function while we were at home? Did we have that skill set?
Or the tools.
Right.
And, on the slow change one, it wasn't necessarily slow change. It was the need to change rapidly,
Right.
Processes, procedures, how we respond to things and all that. So so as I said, there are times when, these bubble up to the surface in terms of how they impact an organization. And at other times it's, you're getting all of it all at once, like a fire hose.
That's right. That's right. Well, slowness of change wasn't necessarily a problem in 2020. We didn't have time to really be slow about it, right? So, why? Because there was a really big incentive there.
In that time, it was fast change. It was rapid change coming at
That's
you.
right. That's right. So you can see where these get reflected in the opposite too. So I hope this chart is helpful for some of you as a quick and dirty diagnostic. It doesn't mean to be the be all and end all, but I think it's a good place to start to say, okay, where are we in this, and what are the things that we might have to focus on? Want to remind everybody that we will be taking questions at the end. Love for you to, if you do have a question, to put it into the Q&A. Melissa's going to monitor those, and we're going to try to work those in. And if we can't get a question answered during our session today, I'm happy to respond after the fact. This is the first of a series of, I think, 4 sessions that we're doing. So 1 of 4. The next one is going to be focused more on strategy. And then the 2 after that, we're really going to look to you to help us determine what are the topics for those based on what we've talked about so far. So next up, we're really going to jump into the actual foundational material here. And that is this thing called the 7S model. What is this 7S model? This is an actual picture of the cover of my copy. Actually, it was my dad's copy. I stole it from him when I was in college, of In Search of Excellence, the great Tom Peters and Bob Waterman book that really started and launched I think the business book explosion that happened in the 80s and 90s. It was really one of the first ones to really jump out there. And on page 10 of this book, Peters and Waterman present to us what is called as the Mckinsey 7S framework. And you see this right there. This is, again, a picture of that page, page 10. It's known in the organizational development world as the page 10 model. And what they called it the happy atom. You know, they had these different S's, right? Strategy, structure, systems, shared values, skills, staff, and style. They were all working together. They were all working around one another. They had this great analogies. They said that each of these 7 bubbles was like 7 lenses through which you would view like the bottom of a microscope. Remember, in high school, you would look at the onion skin under 10 power, then 20 power, and then 30 power, and see different structures based on the power. And you could turn different filters, blue and red, on, and you would see different things by looking at that microscope. And they said this is the same thing. This is 7 different ways of looking at an organization, and that's what the structure of their book was based on. So then they looked at all of these companies that in their minds had achieved excellence, and they went through why, and with all of these different companies. Curiously, by the way, Peters did come out and say about 5 years ago that he completely faked his data for this book. And it just, actually absolutely admitted it, that he just faked the data. I don't think that's a reason to dismiss it outright, but I will say that many of these excellent companies no longer exist. So I guess we have that going for us. I do think, though, that we can learn from this model, but I'm going to change the model slightly, or actually, I'm not going to change the model slightly. It was modified. This model was modified by some other consultants at McKinsey in the late 1980s. And instead of the happy atom version of it, what they did instead is they pulled it out and intended for the model to be read left to right. So you start over on the left-hand side and then move toward the other side. So we start with this thing called shared vision. We make sure that our shared vision is in place. Then we move over and talk about strategy. From strategy, we then talk about our staff. I'm not a big fan of the word staff, but that's another conversation. And then you notice that the staff, the people side of this, is composed of the other 4 things. What are the skills that those people have? The structure of how we put them together, org chart wise, so to speak. The style, the way that we work together. Sometimes you might think of this as a little bit of culture, like what are the style, the way that our folks interact with one another. And then finally, our hard and fast systems. Now, what's interesting is I think that we see in this an echo of the how versus what matters stuff. The systems question certainly at the bottom of this, but even the style, structure, and skills set are very much those how questions, right? How do you do it? How long will it take? How much is it going to, how do we get those people to change? How have others done it successfully? These are all things that are over on the right-hand side of this model. And the mantra for the folks at McKinsey, when they were going through this material, it was to say, we really have to look left. Look left. If you're struggling inside your organization with skill, structure, style, and systems type stuff, and also people, then the answers to those questions aren't by looking at the right-hand side. They actually emerge by looking further left. So in other words, what is the strategy? And then if you're still struggling understanding what your strategy is, then you move further left and you say, oh, but what is our vision? What is our shared vision as an organization? And until we completely ask and answer those questions, it makes it much more challenging for us to answer the questions over on the right-hand side of the model. So what we're going to do today is we're going to explode shared vision, and we're going to do a deep dive on what shared vision is. Now, what's really fun for me in talking about shared vision, especially with a group of not-for-profit organizations, is that this is something in which most not-for-profits have excelled. Not-for-profits, in my view, have been much, much better at defining and crafting their shared vision than companies that are in the profit space. I think we all have them, but I think but for the most part, not-for-profits have done a better job at this. That said, I also think that over time, not-for-profits have a tendency to forget about their shared vision, to let it lax and not be focused as much on it as they should. And maybe that's the challenge for those of you today. So for those organizations that maybe you've been around for quite some time, maybe there's nothing new here. But the question is do your people inside the organization share that same sense of shared vision that folks inside the organization had 5, 10, 20, maybe even in some cases 30 years ago? And if that's not the case, what we potentially need to do is have a revival of sorts. What is it that we can do to revive that shared vision inside the organization?
All right. I think that has a lot to do, Ed, with slide 3 of kind of, retreating back into the day-to-day of, just dealing with the management of the org.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
They lose sight of what was their original mission and vision.
Absolutely, I think that's absolutely the case. I mean, it's the classic stuff. We deal with what becomes urgent in front of us, right? It's that urgent stuff that gets our attention. The fires that we put out, and this goes back to Peter Drucker, who did a lot of work with organizations, especially not-for-profits. By the way, I mean that was one of his areas of expertise, was not-for-profit organizations. He was one of his biggest customers ever was Girl Scouts. And but one of the things that he talks about is that far too many organizations spend time dealing with problems than pursuing opportunities. This is a classic Drucker line, that we need to pursue opportunities rather than deal with problems. And it's not that he says ignore the problems. He just says make sure that we're not focused an inordinate amount of time just on problems. And when you find that you are, stop doing that. So does that make sense, Rob?
Yeah, it does, totally.
And another really, before we get into what is the shared vision piece and explode this out, I wanted to share one other story that I think is relevant in the context of this conversation. And that is something that came to me from John Mackey, who is the CEO of Whole Foods. I don't know what his title is now inside the Amazon. He might be still CEO of Whole Foods.
I don't know. CEO.
Yeah. So, but they've been purchased and are now part of the Amazon family. But Mackey wrote a book 5 or 6 years ago called Conscious Capitalism, and one of the great analogies that he shares in this book is he says that inside organizations, now remember, he's talking about Whole Foods, which is a for-profit organization, but as most of you know, is also very much focused on its purpose, on its mission. And what he says inside an organization, profit, or what not-for-profits call reserves, right? The reserves, the money that we take in to be able to do the great things that we do. That is the result. He says it's a lot like red blood cells in your body. My friend Rob on the other side, I know, is a big runner and it takes really good care of himself from a body perspective. But Rob, did you wake up this morning thinking that red blood cell production was on your to-do list? Was that on your to-do list at all?
No, it wasn't, Ed. I did not think that at all. And I I think these look like miniature donuts in a way. Is what I heard. So I
Jelly
did not
donuts.
think about red blood cells at all.
Right. But I do know that you think about, like, what is it that I'm going to eat today? Am I going to be able to exercise? Am I going to be able to spend some time in quiet contemplation? And these are all of the things that ultimately produce red blood cells in our body. But we don't think, hey, red blood cell projection on my to-do list today. That's not how we think of these things. But we do have a purpose in life. We do have things that we want to do. I wake up every morning wanting to help small businesses, whether they're in the for-profit or not-for-profit space. That's who I am. I really love working with entrepreneurs, but that's my purpose. But it is ultimately, if I don't produce red blood cells, I'm going to die. Same thing is true inside organizations. If you don't produce, whether it's profit or reserves or have contingency so that you can do the things that you want to do, if that's not what's happening inside your organization is going to die. But that's not the purpose of your organization. The purpose isn't fundraising. That's not the purpose. The purpose is something else, and fundraising is the result of those things. And I think it's important to keep those things in mind, that those are a separate thing. And now I want to explode on this notion. The rest of our time together, our 40 minutes or so, is going to be around this notion of understanding what are the components of shared vision, and then even giving you perhaps some examples. And then we'd love to take your questions. Again, best thing to do if you do have a question, feel free to go ahead and type them into the question box. I think we can also monitor the chat. And I know we do have a couple of questions that have already been submitted. So thank you for those of you who have done that as well. Rob, before I launch in, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Nope, I think we're doing great. It's good.
Okay, cool stuff. All right. So let's talk now about the components of shared vision, and there are three, and they have a lot of different names. Different people, different management thinkers call them different things. I'm going to teach you the ones that are the ones that I'm most familiar with, but if you don't like these names, or these names are a little bit different in your organization, don't fret about it. So the shared vision consists of these three subcomponents: the value, also known as the core beliefs of the organization; the mission, which is also sometimes referred to as purpose; and then lastly, the vision, which is the aspiration, or some folks call it the courageous goal. I believe it was Jim Collins called it the BHAG, right? The BHAG. BHAG, I love this, one of my favorite business acronyms: big, hairy, audacious goal, which I guess is counterposed against the small, bald, and unaudacious one. I don't know. What's our short, bald, unimportant goal? I don't know. So big, hairy, audacious goal. So those are the three components. Let's in turn deal with each one of them. First, let's talk about values, right? Values. These are the founding beliefs of your organization. What is it that you collectively believe in? And notice the collectively there. What do we as an organization believe in? And even if your organization was founded, as they usually are, by one or two people, that collection of beliefs needs to be passed down from generation to generation inside the organization and shared. That's why this is part of the shared vision, and shared with those folks. So what is it that we collectively believe in, that everyone who's a part of this organization should have some kind of a significant connection to? What is, I think, important about these is these rarely will ever change inside an organization. The values don't suddenly change. You might make small tweaks to the wording of them occasionally, but for the most part, once the values are inherent in the organization, they're fairly fixed. You wouldn't say, one of our values is honesty, and then say, yeah, well, we tried that honesty thing, so that's not working. So we're going to try dishonesty for a while, see how that works out. Right. So that's not something that you're going to flip over and check. So it's not something that oftentimes the organization will make adjustments to. These, the numbering here, take this for what it's worth. It's usually between maybe 4 and 8, either words or statements that people can talk about and understand. And there's also a debate inside the organizational development community around whether or not even your values should be shared internally or shared externally or just kept internal. And one of the reasons for this is that what we don't want is that we don't want necessarily outsiders using our values as a weapon against us. I do not subscribe to this theory, by the way, but this is just what some people think, that the purpose, the mission and vision you can share outside, but the values want to keep sacrosanct and to the only the insiders. I don't know if I buy into that, but that's the thinking behind it anyway, because they're so near and dear to us. So again, quick and dirty, 4 to 8 words, and probably best off if I give you some examples of this and how they might work inside your organization. So these are randomly selected. So here's some different ones. The first one there, this is again a set of values: customers first, velocity, do the right thing, innovate, and make a difference. I'll share with you that these are SAGEs. If you go to the sage.com website and go to corporate vision, you will find a variation on this: customers first, velocity, do the right thing, innovate, make a difference. So that those are the things that are on SAGE's list. I've worked with and all of these, by the way, are from real companies. In some cases, I was involved in meetings where we developed these. So next one, ensure quality of life balance. That was something that was really near and dear to the people inside this organization, that they had this work-life balance, quality of life balance. Acting with integrity, truthfulness, open lines of communication, collaborating as a team, drawing on understanding of each other's strengths. Rob, curious to know if you know whose these are: focused, independent, innovative, and proven.
No.
See, that's JMT's, Rob. That's a
Thanks, Ed.
That's JMT's. It's on your website. It's on the website. Yeah. And what I think is really well done, if you take a look at JMT's website, is they go through and there's a paragraph on each of these. Mm-hmm. That and explains in great detail what each of these things mean to the founders of the organization. Quite frankly, I think JMT's done an excellent job of putting these things together. I know Jackie actually a long time, and I can tell you she is definitely all 4 of these things. So in a way, it's interesting to see how they echo and embody the values of the founder, but are passed down, as I said, along inside the organization to others who join the organization subsequently. One of the things that, especially with values, that I think that how to use them in a practical sense. I mean, you can do this with mission and vision too, but I think values are really the key to this. Is develop when you're hiring, develop interview questions around your values inside your organization, and ask people to what I would call tell me about a time, story questions about when they exhibited those values. So for example, if I were hiring for a JMT, was conducting an interview, I would have 4 interview questions. All of them would be one right after the other. And I would say, tell me about a time when you were extremely focused. And I would ask this person to tell me a story about that. Tell me about a time when you just demonstrated your independence. Tell me about a time when you were innovative. And tell me about a time when you had proved yourself to others. And what was that experience like? And I want to know the story around that. I want to know what that is. And because then what I'm able to do is I'm able to see, is this person in alignment with the organization, with the people inside the organization, who I would assume, since I have hired people previously, are in alignment with that. And I just think that if you develop interview questions that are based on the values of the organization, that it's much more likely, although nothing's ever 100%, that you will get people who will be a fit inside the organization, because they're already more likely to be part of of what it is that you believe in. I also think that using your values as part of your evaluation process is a great thing. I would ask for a story internally from each person. Tell me about a time this year when you were focused, when you were independent, when you were innovative, when you were proven. So as part of your, I don't like performance reviews, but let's just say that as part of our internal coaching inside the organization, focus on these things. And I also think it's quite important to constantly be bringing these up in the context of decisions that are made inside the organization. So for example, if a decision is made inside your organization to do something, whatever the something is, when we make the decision and announce the decision to the organization, we should cite one or more of our values in the rationale, in the reasoning for us making that decision. And what I love about this, and I've worked with organizations that have done this, that have gotten to the point of saying, we're going to do this. And I'm like, great. Okay. Looking back at your values, which of those values are the things that bolster this? And what's really neat is you actually get two or three, two distinct different reactions to this. One is one of abject panic when they realize that the decision they're making is not in alignment, with their values. And as a result, they sometimes pull back and ultimately change a decision or don't go forward in some way. The other thing is that I've seen people, and this is the more often the case, by the way, so I should really cite that once they start to build reasons, rationales for the decision based on the values, it becomes much, much more powerful, and as a result is oftentimes more accepted in the organization going forward, because we're citing again this pool of values that all of us collectively believe in. So, Rob, sorry to put you on the spot there.
No,
but
it's totally good.
Any other thoughts on this? I know that you have done some work with these types of things in some organizations where this has become part of what it is that you do.
I think it's a great exercise, and clearly it's good to, keep them top of mind in the organization as you, get further and further away from that exercise where you create them or reaffirm them. So I think they're terrific.
Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. To me, I'm not supposed to say this because this is not what the organizational development literature says. I think the values are the most important thing of the three. They are the most important. But a lot of people say, "Oh no, they work together." But I think to me, it's values is where it's at for as really the launching point for everything else inside the organization. All right, next up, let's talk a little bit about mission. So mission has three subcomponents, but ultimately what we're trying to do in a mission statement, and by the way, a mission statement should be one sentence, really quick. It answers the question for everyone in the organization, why did I come to work today? The goal of a mission is to be as succinct and as articulate as possible, but answer the question, why did I come to work today, for everyone in the organization, regardless of that person's position. It should be the superordinate reason. And yes, we all do different things inside the organization, but ultimately what we're doing is, we all came to work today to do this. So I think it should be easy to memorize. And this one can change. I have seen examples, in fact, I'll give you one later, of organizations that have adapted and adjusted their mission statement based on the context of time. Unlike values, mission is something that can and does adjust over time. Now, sometimes it's a long period of time before we adjust it, but they do tend to adjust based on outside market conditions, changes inside the organization, maybe even changes perhaps in overall direction. So let's talk about the three components, the subcomponents of the mission statement, which is, what do we do? Who benefits from what we do? And then optionally, a third clause is, how do we do it? What do we do? Who benefits? And how do we do that? Notice that the how comes last, right? So it's another echo of that how versus what matters stuff. Block says the what matters questions are important, and then the how comes after that. So it's it continues to we see this continue to show itself in all kinds of ways. So let's show it at three examples of this. The first one, to energize business builders around the world through the imagination of our people and the power of technology. This again is SAGE's vision statement: to energize business builders around the world through the imagination of our people and the power of technology. That is the answer to why do I come to work today as a Sage employee. It's why I'm doing this webcast with my friends at JMT, because I think we're combining the power of people and power of technology together, and I think that's a wonderful thing. This next one happens to be of an organization that I was once a part of, to improve the business success of our clients by providing superior business systems. What I really like about this one is that it's very, very clear the breakout of the three components, right? To improve business success, what we do, of our clients, who benefits, by providing superior business systems, how we do it, right? So you see also outcomes of this in the others as well. And then this last one, better outcomes through mission. Rob, guess who this is?
That's going to be JMT, Ed. And everybody knows that.
Awesome. So let me. I will put you on the spot a little bit here. Talk a little bit about the emergence of the use of this mission statement inside JMT. Oh, I like this because it's clear that what you're trying to do here is better outcomes for your mission. Meaning, it's a very much pay it forward kind of mission.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that drives us. So we have an internal document that we use called our manifesto, which is it's a thing that we've developed that helps us, guides us, and it's around our decision making. And the first step is everything we do. This is what we believe. Everything we do, we believe, must help nonprofits to better achieve their mission's goals. So it's that thing there. Ensuring the success of each of our customers is our mission. So this is the thing, that's the first sentence in our manifesto. It's the thing that we teach all of our employees. And the great thing about working with JMT is that most of our employees come from a nonprofit background. We're all very passionate about the people that we work with, the customers that we serve. So it is a living embodiment of our mission.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I resonate very much with the JMT mission here, and a couple different things on this. One, I do love this pay it forward nature, because by the way, and I personally think that if you one of the best movies to understand the nature of business is not to watch Wall Street, but to watch Pay It Forward, right? Yeah. This notion of the creation and the doing of something good for other people. I even think for-profit organizations are much better served when they think of it in those terms. Like, what is it that we do? What is it that we create that helps make somebody else's life better, right? So I think that's it's a great thing to rally around. So I like JMT's take on this, that it's very much pay it forward. But I think that what's important here is that notice that these are all short. These are very easily digestible. I've worked with organizations that started off where their mission statements were quite literally paragraphs, even pages long, and no one could possibly understand them. So the key here is to take what you have, if you don't have something like this, and really make it as succinct as possible. By the way, the key is to look for some kind of an infinitive verb form, right? I would say that JMT's has that you have an unspoken one, which is to create, right? To create better outcomes for your mission. But the others are like to energize, to improve. So you can see if you're looking in the language, you're looking for some kind of a powerful, tight, infinitive verb, right? So it really is a very much action oriented. All right. Just a reminder that certainly want you guys to put some questions in. We're really doing great on time here. I think we're going to be able to get to at least the 3 questions that have been sent in previously. But if you have any thoughts or comments and want to share with us, I think we'll have time to ask. So looking forward to getting to those as well. All right. So the last of the 3 of parts of the shared vision, remember we're talking here about the 3 components of shared vision. So we have our values, our mission statement, and then vision, which is not, right? So mission, values, mission, and vision. So let's talk about what this is, this thing called, or what others have called the courageous goal, or BHAG, as I mentioned, the big, hairy, audacious goal. Again, clarity and conciseness are important here. little room for interpretation. Should not be something that is, while the values are certainly subjective versus objective, what you want for a goal is less subjective and more objective as we get tighter and tighter around this. The goal should be something that's achievable, difficult and daring perhaps, and in the future, some period of time. Most folks recommend a 3 to 5 year window. I've seen people that have visions that go as long as 10 years. There's even some that are 20 years long or 30 years long, depending upon the industry. But I think that what you want to do is, for most organizations, and this includes any not-for-profits as well, some courageous goal, some vision that's in a 3 to 5 year time horizon that, is not a gimme, not as, hey, absolutely no question we're going to achieve this, but that's something that is quite doable. It's certainly it must be aligned with the current mission and vision, and that's a test that you should have to make sure, hey, is this in alignment with the things that we've talked about previously? And in most cases, they usually would be, but it should be something that's tested, and it should be changed when it's achieved. And once it's achieved, this change should happen in a very quick period of time. Otherwise, this loses a lot of power and a lot of steam. I have worked personally with several organizations that did the work of creating values, mission, and vision and up front in the organization, went out, achieved the vision, achieved it, but made the mistake of not creating a new one and fell apart shortly thereafter. It was very, very difficult to reinvigorate this organization once it had lost any future vision for itself. So it should change when it achieved, and it can be quantitative as well as qualitative. Again, as long as it is clear and concise. That's what we're really looking for. Again, we're looking for much more objectivity in this rather than subjectivity in this. So another test for this, and this is out of Jim Collins' work as well. He says it's a test to see, hey, is your vision, your BHAG, is it in the right place? Is to test to see if it meets these three criteria. One, is it something that you're deeply passionate about? And in most cases, usually not-for-profits don't have any problem with that one. So what are you deeply passionate about? Can you be the best in the world at it? Could your organization be the one that really does this and is known for this in the industry? And then certainly what drives your economic engine? And of course, for you, this is, will this drive fundraising? Right? Is this going to be a situation where we're going to be able to get the funds that we deem necessary to be able to take care of of our vision that we have? Because while some things are very, very much very important, they might only be important to a very small number of people and might not drive the economic engine. What was the line, Rob, in Spinal Tap, right? When the band has played for a while, and they come back, and instead of 30,000 seats, there's like, oh yes, he says, would you say that they become less popular? And he says, no, our appeal has been more selective. So he says, our appeal is now more selective.
Very exclusive.
They're very exclusive appeal. So I don't mean to make fun. This is probably a very worthy cause, but I did work with an organization about 10 years ago. It no longer exists, which was called, hand to God on this, People Helping People Help Parrots. That was the not-for-profit organization. They were people helping people help parrots. It was very specific. It was they weren't helping parrots. There was not a direct connection to the parrots. They were people helping people who helped parrots. And they were very specific about it. So again, don't mean to make fun. It was quite but point being, this person was extraordinarily passionate about her. I had my heart really welled inside when I worked with her organization, but there weren't a lot of people, shall we say, that were making high-level donations to people helping people help parrots, be that as it may. So as worthy a cause as that might seem. So the last thing we'll look at, and then I'll take questions, and thank you, Robin, for submitting a question. I do see it, that there's a question there, and I will get to it in just a few minutes, because we've got some time left. Rob, I know you and I have had a conversation about this, but my favorite all-time vision statement is this 2-word vision, which is simply crush Adidas. And I love this because when I do this presentation in front of an audience, I'll ask, don't tell me, but hands up if you know the organization. And every hand goes up. Like every hand knows what organization this is just by looking at the 2-word crush Adidas. Of course, it's Nike. And they did.
They did a long time ago. I think they created this in the 60s, not long after they were first created. Now, I don't know the answer to this, which I think I've established a pattern here for that. I don't know what is their BHAG today. A swoosh, everywhere. But no, that was a very good one. JFK had a good one, which is put a man on the moon in this decade.
Right.
Which
at the end of the decade.
One of those big, hairy, audacious goals, 1963, I think, or two, when they actually did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is a great example. The Martin Luther King too. Another one is, and what I like about his is it's actually more visionary, right? It's the I have a dream speech. Notice that he had an I had a dream speech, not I have a plan. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have a plan. He had a dream. He had a dream.
Not as good. Yeah.
Yeah. So Crush Adidas, a great example of. By the way, I don't know, Rob, if you haven't read this, but highly recommend to everybody in this group because I think it's on the Nike thing. But the book Shoe Dog, which is by the founder of Nike. I can't recall his name off the top of my head, but you would recognize him if you saw him. But it's the story of Nike and what they did. It's an amazing book. So Shoe Dog, highly recommend Shoe Dog.
Bill Knight is the guy's name.
Knight. Yeah.
And he had Bowerman. He had this guy Bowerman that was making these shoes on literally a waffle iron. It's an incredible story of how they started down in the at the University of Oregon. So
it's a great book. Yeah, great book.
Mm-hmm.
A computer on, speaking of, Oregon or the Northwest, anyway, a computer on every desk and in every home. This, of course, would be Microsoft, which when they came out with this in 1979, everybody laughed at and thought was completely absurd. That's stupid. Why would there be a computer on every desk and in every home? And now we have, 1, 2, 3 of them in my near vicinity. Interestingly enough, this is the example I want to say that how some of this stuff does change from time to time. Microsoft did add this. By the way, this is not theirs anymore. There's something like helping humans reach their full potential. I think Microsoft has changed to something like that. But a computer on every desk and every home, they added in 1984 after viewing the Apple commercial, by the way, running Microsoft software to their vision statement. So it's running Microsoft software, just so we're clear. Here's an example to increase donations. Sorry, should have in there to 250,000 per colleague by December 2025. There's an example of one that would be articulated as a quantitative vision statement. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's not Crush Adidas, but no other vision is. But I think that there are sometimes important ones to put things out there that are truly in the interest of this notion of quantitative visions as well. All right, I'm ready to start to go with questions. Melissa, get yours ready. We've got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to answer Robin since she had the courage of typing it in here. So Rob, I'll ask for your help on this one too. Helping to get the Q&A started. How do you differentiate between an intended impact statement and a vision statement? Also, how do you convince an organization that values are important? So let's take the second one first. Let's take that second one first. How do you convince an organization that values are important? And do you have any thoughts on that, Rob? I got one, but it's rather cynical. So
that's not good, Ed.
Yeah.
They're guideposts for us. They help us. They're things that we think that are important, and they're non-changeable. They're the long haul, but they're pillars for us to lean against and say, hey, does this meet our criteria? Is this part of our DNA as an organization?
But the question was, how do you convince people that they're important? And this is where my cynicism comes in, because my immediate response was to say you don't.
I think that's probably not as cynical as you think. I think they have to become part of the DNA of how you manage the place, of how we communicate, how we conduct ourselves. So I think that's more of a thing that we integrate into our operational, how do we work ourselves as a company, and how do we treat our people and our clients and our constituencies and our partners. And those are the things in which we lean up against, that we make sure that we are in fact keeping ourselves in line. So I think it's a great question. I think it's something that you have to do more as,
Looks like Rob may have frozen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the only thing I would add to that too, and this is perhaps the less cynical side of me, saying that if you don't have a current set of values in the organization, I would encourage you to gather either the leadership team or even the entire organization, depending upon the size, and just set aside maybe a morning. Best might be on a Saturday if you can swing that, but so that you're not distracted by the daily operations, and just talk about, hey, what's near and dear to your heart? What do you each believe in as a group? And just have the conversation with the facilitator, who might be saying, well, trying to put those things into common buckets. And I think what you may see emerge organically is some overlap in what each individuals collectively believe in, that can then be taken as, okay, this is what we can then create as the vision of the organization. As I said, if the values, if the values of the organization already exist, I certainly just think that bringing them to the center, using them in decision making, and say you're using them in decision making, is important. And then there's the other thing I might add is that sometimes questioning against known values is important too. Here's the language around this. If you are in a situation where you think that a decision is being made that is not in alignment with the values of the organization, then the question sounds something like this: whoever you go to, help me understand how this decision to do whatever is in alignment with our values, and maybe even say, is in alignment with our value of X, and name what the value is. These are our stated values, so help me understand how this is in alignment with that. And the intention here is to get a conversation going around the connection point. It's not intended as a gotcha, right? I don't want you to use this and say, well, you're making a decision that's against our values, and I'm going to use this question to get you, right? That's not my intention. My intention here is to truly seek and start a conversation about making the connection between the decisions that are made on a regular basis and the values of the organization. So that might be Robin, a way to help convince. With regard to your second point, which is the notice of the impact statement, and thank you for the clarification on this. You said intended impact defines the specific outcomes that your organization will hold itself accountable for achieving within a reasonable time frame. Hold on to that question and come back, Robin, because I think that I would classify some of those things as a little bit more strategic in nature, and which is going to be the subject of our second session together. I don't mean that. Thanks for the ability to give you the cliffhanger there, but I think we're going to talk much more about those things in our next session. So Melissa, now back over to you, and if you could share with us, we've got about 5 minutes left. So the questions that you've gotten, and for Rob and I to take a stab at.
Perfect. So the first question is, what tools, e.g. data and decision-making processes, are helpful in a situation where some stakeholders believe our organization should have a broader, bolder vision, and others believe we should continue to focus on one specific area?
So read the first part of that again, if you would.
Sure. What tools, And then in
Mhm.
parentheses, data and decision-making processes are helpful in a situation where some stakeholders believe our organization should have a broader, bolder vision.
Mm.
Others believe focus on
Yeah, this is a thank you for the question. Whoever asked this question, this is a good question. Here's I'm gonna because I also know that Rob is a fan of this guy too, and he left us in 2020. Clayton Christensen, who there's a great quote from Clayton Christensen that says that clear data is only available about the past, right? So if you're looking for data that is future directed, you're never going to find it, because by definition, data is about the past. What we only have to look forward is a belief system. And I think what you have in your organization is a big challenge right now, because if there are people who want to move on and broaden things, you are talking about an existential question that needs to be talked at and worked through at the highest levels of the organization. Until that conversation is had, you're going to be in a tough spot, because that actually goes right back to my first slide, one of the early slides, right? Is that you're going to be in a perpetually confused state if there is a divide, especially at the leadership level, with whether or not we should what Peters would call stick to the knitting or begin to expand into a new place. So I don't know what your answer is, but I do know the answer is you need to ask and answer that question as quickly as possible. Rob?
Well, I would think the question is, what's the motivation behind the two points of view? And this is a common thing on the business side, where they want to diversify, they want to do lots of things to widen their focus or widen their funnel or whatever. And there are equally powerful folks on the other side saying we're way better off staying highly focused in the specific area that we have the most expertise in and the most. And to Ed's point, this is these are the tugs and pulls of organizations trying to continue to make sure that they're relevant to their mission. And so it goes back to, what is the mission? What are our values?
Great point.
What's our goal? So it's a common and a worthy thing to argue through, to focus on, because it challenges you on either side of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it is also part of strategy too, which I know we're going to have a lot more to say about next time as well. So yeah, good. All right, Melissa, you got one more, I think? One or two more?
I do, and I think I'll ask one, and then we'll continue the conversation next time, since we're almost out of time.
Okay.
How do we start this conversation with others in our organization so that we can focus on this? I know, Ed, you and I talked last week, and you said what really helps in this particular session is having multiple people from the same organization attend. But
right.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah, I think that for those of you who've attended this session today and were solo from your organization, I think that share the slides that we have. I believe this is being recorded. Are you going to allow those who have recorded this to review it again?
Yeah.
Have a watch party. Have a watch party inside your organization, and see what the appetite is for it. If there are others besides yourself who are enthusiastic about this material, then I think that's a great place to start, right? That's why we don't want to be, you don't want to be the Lone Ranger all of the time. And even the Lone Ranger had Tano, that's probably a bad cultural reference, but.
There are a lot of great consultants in this industry who do great work helping nonprofits, focus their mission and vision, to work on strategy, and we're fortunate to work with an awful lot of them, and that is a worthy thing to go through. To Ed's point, don't do it alone. This is a shared experience, and not only the outcome, but the process of working together on big questions and big challenges is very, very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be happy to help. I don't know if I can see it through to fruition, but there's my contact information up there at EdClass. And by Melissa, if I'll send you an email on this, but if you could include my personal eval in with the eval that you send out, which is available at that website, that would be helpful for me so that I get some direct feedback.
Yes, we'd be happy to.
Okay.
All right. So
All right.
Before I wrap it up, Ed and Rob, I'm going to ask if you have any final remarks, and then I'll close us down.
Look forward to seeing you guys next time. I hope this was helpful for each of you. Really appreciate it.
Rob?
I'm
anything?
good.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you for coming.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. Like Ed said, this is part 1 of a 4-part series. The next one is February 9th. You can already register. We will also be sending out the registration link. So we hope that you and some of your colleagues will join us. Again, you will get a survey. We are looking for feedback on how to continue this, what you want to get out of this. So the more feedback that you provide, the better that we can help you. So we appreciate your time, and I hope that everyone has a great day, and we'll see you in February.
Cool.
Hi, everybody. Thanks,
Bye.
Ed. It's good talking.